The night was unusually quiet. Outside, the wind had settled, and even the neighborhood owls seemed to have taken the night off. Julia sat curled up on the couch with a blanket over her legs and a book in hand, her body slowly unwinding from another long day of diaper changes, bottle washing, and lullabies. Her daughter Emma was just 3 months old, still settling into her rhythms, but tonight, so far, had been peaceful. At her feet, Max, her loyal German shepherd, lay with his chin on his paws. He was always near her, always calm. But tonight, something was off. He shifted frequently, ears twitching, and occasionally sat up to stare toward the hallway that led to Emma's room. At first, Julia ignored it. Max was protective by nature. Maybe he just heard the wind shift or a distant car door close. But then he stood stiff-legged and let out a low, uneasy whine. That got her attention. "What is it, boy?" she asked, setting her book down and leaning forward. He didn't move from his spot, but his eyes were fixed, alert, concerned. Julia glanced at the baby monitor on the side table. Emma's little form was still and peaceful in the crib. Nothing unusual. No cries. No tossing and turning. But Max was acting like he knew something she didn't. She stood up, stretching her sore back, and walked to the hallway. Max followed closely at her heel, staying just behind her as she moved toward the nursery. Her bare feet padded quietly over the wooden floor as a soft glow spilled from the hallway nightlight. She opened the nursery door gently. Emma was fast asleep, her chest rising and falling, one tiny hand curled beneath her cheek. Max came to the doorway, peering inside with a deep exhale. He stepped in cautiously, sniffed around the crib, and then sat down next to it, ears perked, eyes still scanning. Julia furrowed her brow. "You're really on alert tonight," she whispered. She sat down in the rocking chair beside the crib. The room smelled faintly of lavender and baby lotion. Everything was peaceful, but Max remained restless, pacing once around the room before letting out another low whine. Then Julia heard something, so soft she wasn't sure at first if it was real. A baby's cry. But it wasn't coming from the monitor. She stood up slowly. Emma was still asleep, undisturbed. But the sound, faint and muffled, drifted up from below. Max's ears perked instantly, and before Julia could stop him, he trotted out of the nursery and down the hall toward the basement door. A tingle of confusion passed through her. She wasn't scared, just deeply puzzled. She followed him. The basement door stood open, though she was certain she hadn't touched it all day. Max stood at the top of the stairs, tail low but wagging gently, staring into the darkness below. "Max, wait." Julia clicked on the light and cautiously followed him down. The basement was tidy, used mostly for storage. Old photo albums, outgrown baby clothes from her sister's kids, seasonal decorations. Everything looked exactly as it should, except one thing. Tucked in the corner of the room, beside a stack of unpacked boxes, sat an old wooden cradle. Julia froze. She had never seen it before. The cradle was beautiful, vintage, with hand-carved birds along its edges, rocking slightly as though it had just been touched. Inside, neatly folded, was a tiny quilt with the name Emma embroidered into it in faded thread. She approached slowly. There was no baby, no danger, but she felt something warm in her chest. A strange, gentle tug of memory. Her grandmother. Suddenly, it came back to her. The stories her mother used to tell. About an old cradle handmade by Julia's great-grandfather. A cradle passed through generations of their family, lost during a move years ago. They had believed it to be gone forever. And yet, here it was. Tears welled in her eyes as she reached out to touch it. The wood was warm. The quilt soft. Max sat beside it, calm now, his tail sweeping the floor gently. No longer alert, just present, as if he'd known this wasn't about danger, but about something forgotten that needed to be remembered. Julia carried the cradle upstairs later that night. She didn't understand how it had gotten there. Maybe her mother had found it and placed it there secretly as a surprise. Maybe it had been in the basement all along, buried under boxes she never thought to open. But none of that mattered. That night, she tucked him into the cradle for a short nap in the living room beside her, Max lying close by, eyes watching over them both with quiet pride. Sometimes, The heart remembers what the mind forgets, and sometimes it takes a loyal dog to remind us